Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Welcome, everybody, to the Must Read Alaska Show. I'm your host, John Quick, coming to you live from somewhere in Alaska. Man, it is still a rainy day all over Alaska. I'm sure that our forests appreciate it. I'm sure that our firemen and women appreciate it. But man, it'd be nice to have a little bit of sun. We want to thank everybody that listens, watches, and reads Must Read Alaska. We do this to spread conservative news through all the nooks and crannies of Alaska. And if you want to help keep the lights on here at Must Read Alaska, just go to mustreadalaska.com. On the right-hand side, there's a little donate button. Every $5, $10, $100 helps keep the lights on here at Must Read Alaska. We're not funded by some dark web nonprofit money conglomerate. We're just funded by everyday folks who love and care about Alaska. So without further ado, I have a very special guest today, Rick, who is the executive director of Power of the Future for Alaska, or state director, shall I say, for Power of the Future of Alaska. Rick, welcome back to the Must Read Alaska Show.
Always a pleasure, John. So excited to be part of the Must Read Alaska family today. And again, as I mentioned before we came on, what Suzanne and you do for the conservative side of news here in the state is unmatched. And so, I want to say thank you as a sponsor and contributor and supporter. You guys really do an amazing job, and I'm just pleased to be part of it today.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited that you're on the show again. The last time we had you on, it was a fan favorite. People loved it. Talk to us. Somebody's going to listen to this and hear, potentially could hear about Power of the Future for the first time. So before we kind of get into our gamut of topics, tell us a little bit about what the heck is Power of the Future.
So Power of the Future started just about 6 years ago. We're an energy advocacy organization, a nonprofit 501c4, national in scope. I am one of our 2 state directors here in the country. We focus on protecting energy jobs in rural America, John, and giving those opportunities for like keystone and cornerstone type jobs in rural small towns and communities across the country. As you know, and as certainly all your listeners know, the Biden administration has launched an all-out assault on traditional energy in the name of climate change and saving the world from the existential threat of climate change. If you could see me giving air quotes right now, you'd see that I'm coughing and giving them simultaneously. But there is no existential threat of climate change. There's just a control and empower mechanism being used by the eco-left and having their lackeys in the Biden administration do it for them. We fight against that garbage, and we fight against that narrative that somehow the world is burning and needs to go away from hydrocarbons. I live a high carbon lifestyle. You do too. So does every listener here. If you're listening to this on the web, that's just part of your high carbon lifestyle. There is nothing that you do in your daily life that could be done unless you're off the grid and wearing, natural clothing.
A burlap sack.
Yeah, I was just going to say, unless you're using shorn sheep wool that you have knit yourself, nothing you're doing in your life could be done without fossil fuels and mined materials. And so the hypocrisy of the eco-left, where it's like, oh, we got to go fossil future free or fossil fuel free, is just such crap, John, that it's fun to poke at and fun to make fun of, but it's also sad what they're doing to middle America and rural America.
Yeah, I saw a clip this morning. I was cruising Twitter for 5 minutes or so, and a elected or high official in Spain was going to this economic summit, and she took a private jet, to the airport. She took a black Uber first to the airport, and then took a private jet to where the summit was. But then she hopped on an electric bike maybe like a mile outside of where
Of
the
course.
engagement was, and rode her bike into the summit meeting, and she was praised as the queen of climate change, basically.
Yeah, again, let's walk the talk, right? I mean, if you want to live a low carbon, no carbon, fossil free lifestyle, cool. I have no desire to do that. And I would say that probably 99% of the world, if they had their choice between, walking the Church of Climate Change talk for themselves, they would refuse as well.
Yeah.
It's just the zealots out there that are doing harm again to America, empowering the communist Chinese, killing opportunities in places like Kaktovik, Iliamna. They'd love to kill the Ambler mining district. I just think, when you start talking about places in Alaska that have first world and second world conditions instead of third world because of resource development, those are things worth fighting for. And so we do it at Power of the Future. And we invite you guys to join us by going and signing up for our newsletters and things like that at powerofthefuture.com.
Nice. Well, let's chat a little bit about this is coming to a backyard around our listeners very soon, because, I think a lot of folks think, they watch Fox News or CNN or whatever it is, and it's like, oh, those, it happens over in DC, or it happens in Seattle, or it happens in Portland or San Francisco, the wokeness around oil or carbon. But the largest electric utility company in Alaska, it has now happened to. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so every year, every electric co-op, every electric utility has board elections. This year in Anchorage, the Chugach electric elections took place, and unfortunately for consumers and rational business people, and those of us that understand that there needs to be an emphasis placed on certainly an all of the above solution if the renewables are mined, processed, and manufactured in America, and not part of this whole climate cult narrative that we talked about a minute ago. Unfortunately for us, the Chugach Electric Board went woke. 2 of the 3 seats that were up for election were supported by the Renewable Energy Alaska Project, by the Alaska Center, by all these climate groups, and they got 2 of their 3 people in on the board, in Suzanne Fleet Green, who is a former Mark Begich staffer and campaign person, and Jim Nordland, who is a returning to the Chugach board and a former Democratic legislator who has a very staunch climate agenda of his own. Thank God, and I'm saying this with the capital G God, that Shayna Kilcoyne didn't get put on that board. She finished 4th. Bettina Chastain, who was the current board chair, beat her out. Shayna Kilcoyne is evil personified against fossil fuels. She hates hydrocarbons. She is the person that, preaches zero emissions and just transitioning and renewable portfolio standards and all that crap. And thank God she finished 4th and didn't get seated. But that just means that they're going to run her again next year in the elections and try to get that absolute radical extremist put on the board. So, 2 steps forward, but it could have been 3, and at least Shayna didn't get seated. But here's the problem, John. This whole movement, right? We've seen this infiltration and infestation of radical environmentalists, whether it's Homer Electric, even Matanuska Electric, Golden Valley Electric, Chugach Electric. This is where the environmental movement has decided to make its next stand, right? By influencing utility boards, then they can start to, maneuver around, again, what most rational people will say is garbage. They can maneuver around, rational energy policies and start pushing these renewable energy first. We have to transition. We can't look at hydrocarbons. We have to go to wind and solar. Again, wind and solar would have a place if we were mining it processing it and manufacturing it in America, but we're not. And that's a problem, because right now that supply chain from mining to processing to manufacturing goes through one country, and they fly a red flag, and they enslave people, and they don't give a rat's anything about an environmental maneuvering. They open 2 coal plants a week, and I'm talking about communist China. So if the entire supply chain goes through the CCP and its minions, why would we ever put our utility grid under the thumb of a country that hates everything that the U.S. stands for?
So do you think that this is, I mean, going to be a roadmap for how they do this all over Alaska when these public utility elections kind of infiltrate at a local level?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is just, this last year they've decided to go get aggressive on these utility boards. They've had a multitude of successes, if you're going to look at it that way. Boards have become either neutral between environmental advocates and business people, or they flipped in the case of Chugach. Why wouldn't they continue to do what's working for them? And it's a call to action for those of us who like, let's say, lower cost utility prices, who like reliable utility transmission. I don't want to have to go when I hit my light switch to think that I'm paying 3 times what I was paying last year, or that it may not come on because of rolling blackouts. I don't want to have to think about electricity, John. And unfortunately, if the left has its way, and if the environmental zealots have their way, we'll be on a renewable portfolio standard that's 80% renewable by 2040. 80%. It's about 15 right now throughout the rail belt. And that's what they're pushing, right? That can't work. Yeah. There's no way, there's not enough hydropower, wind, solar, battery capacity to get us there without a lack of reliability rearing its ugly head and energy costs that are going to skyrocket. Don't let anybody tell you differently. This is not a good move, and it's being pushed on multiple levels at the boardrooms of the utility companies, and even in the state legislature with bills that were introduced last year by Senator Loki Tobin and, surprisingly, Representative Jesse Sumner, a Republican out of Wasilla, put it in the House.
Wow. Yeah, I liken it when I talk to folks about the implications of this. And, I think it's, even for myself, it's sometimes hard to grasp, like, okay, this could be a huge impact if you get people that hate carbons onto a business board or public utility board that's main goal is to produce carbon. It'd be like, the analogy I use on folks is, it would be like if you woke up one day and at your church, all of the elders are now atheists. That would be a bit of a cluster moving forward as a church.
It certainly throws the theocracy into question, right? I mean, if the Church of Climate Change wins utility board seats the way that they've won them in the last year, we truly are going to be looking at a monumental shift in where we get our energy from. And there's a problem there, because we're not in a position, like I said, right now, technology-wise or solution-wise, to have reliable power. It just doesn't work for the rail belt to go away from what's worked for decades, which is natural gas and coal.
So let's chat a little bit about Congresswoman Mary Peltola. She usually votes just along party lines with the Dems pretty much every time. And, obviously, former Congressman Don Young, God rest his soul, that's not how he voted, right? And so she's voting way differently than what Alaskans have experienced for the last 30, 40 years. But she recently broke with broke apart from the Dems and voted in support of something. You guys recently wrote about it. What was that? Tell our folks all about that.
Yeah, well, so Mary Peltola understands the role that natural gas plays in the state of Alaska. And God bless her for that, because I don't always agree with her votes. We've had her on our Power of the Future Energy Hour. I talked with her during the campaign. Mary Peltola is one of the nicest people you will meet, who, again, on most of her policy positions, would run counter to what I would call good energy policy. But a couple of weeks ago, Dems were trying to hit gas stoves and outlaw and ban gas stoves. And there was an amendment to take that out of the bill. And Mary Peltola voted yes for the amendment. As a matter of fact, voted yes on 2 amendments.
Wow.
And she should be given credit for that.
Yeah. So, Rick, why do you think Mary took this stance? It seems like a pretty bold stance, because obviously, historically, most of her votes aligned with the Dems. She broke away from the Dems here. Why do you think she did that?
Yeah, I'll give her credit again. She said in the Anchorage Daily News that because access to gas and propane compatible stoves is important to Alaskans. She talked about the high cost of energy and how going away from that could actually increase energy costs. And she said, quote, "Government has more important things to focus on than our kitchens," unquote. Again, she doesn't always get my plaudits for her votes in that case, because it was the right decision for so many of us here in Alaska that use gas stoves, that use LNG to heat our homes and power our homes and our businesses. I mean, it was the right move. And so, I'll call it out, good, bad, or indifferent. In this case, kudos to Mary Peltola.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you have a decent working relationship with them. They've been on your show before. How important is that? I think in today's political world, folks are polarized on both ends, and I think a lot of conservatives write Congresswoman Mary Peltola off, regardless of what she does. How important is it for you and Power of the Future to keep that door open to have a relationship?
Well, I think it's exceptionally important, especially with the fact, with our congressional makeup right now. There's so many things, John, that are coming up, energy related, that are going to be dealt with in Congress. And right now, Congresswoman Peltola is the Congresswoman for all Alaska. So you should be able to have a dialogue. I mean, this is something that I've known Mary since she was, I think, fresh out of high school. And so, you go back about 30 years and you realize that, your friends and your acquaintances and right now she is our lone representative in Congress. And the fact that I can call up and talk to her staff and, talk to her people and get a call back and have a great conversation with Mary, is good for Alaska. It's good for the energy discussion. I'm not any different than pretty much any other energy advocate in the state. We need Mary Peltola to do the right thing to bring jobs and opportunities to Alaska.
I like that. Well, Senator Lisa Murkowski, I think maybe like a half a day ago, she was up near Nome at Graphite One, which is a mine that produces graphite, holding a graphite core.
Not yet. It will one day.
It will, yeah. Holding a graphite, what looked like a sample core, really making a point to say, listen, we should be not only producing this stuff in the US, but if we're going to produce it in the US, let's produce it in Alaska. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, she couldn't be any better with that response. I mean, we should be. Alaska should be the tip of the spear for production of critical and strategic minerals, graphite, and yes, even a project that she hates and has come out against, copper, like at the Pebble Mine. The whole Go Green movement, as fluky and flaky and crazy as it is, right now, again, we're basically creating a subservience and kowtowing to communist China from a supply chain standpoint. Anything that we can be doing in the US and especially in Alaska to be creating domestic supply chain should be being done. Now, this is again where the Biden administration doesn't walk their talk. In one side of their mouth, they talk about going green, building good union jobs, and creating all these opportunities. And then on the action side of their mouth, they shut down Pebble. They shut down Twin Metals opportunities in Minnesota, another large copper mine, because of its potential eco impact. They shut down a mine in Nevada that would produce lithium and palladium and other, essential minerals for going green. They shut down development in Idaho and in Arizona and Nevada and Utah and all over the country. Why? Because their friends on the eco left say that we shouldn't, ever mine something if it can be environmentally degrading. Newsflash, if we're going to go green, we need each and every one of those mines and more to fulfill the green dream of net zero by 2040 or 2050 or 2027 or whatever the new number is now, right? But it's great to talk it. Their walking rate is horrible, right?
So you mean you can't just pick these batteries out of a tree? They have to actually be made with materials that are from the mines.
In communist China, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I love about my job is I get to call out this hypocrisy, and then I get to advocate for real solutions. Real solutions are Pebble. Real solutions are Ambler. Real solutions are Graphite One. Real solutions are the Strategic Minerals Complex in Bocan Mountain down on Prince of Wales. Real solutions are found all over the state of Alaska, John. And real solutions are what America needs instead of green rhetoric and a green scheme that diminishes American jobs, diminishes American energy independence. And again, I've said it 4 or 5 times on this show, empowers, enables, and strengthens China. It's mind-boggling to me that that we're not more up in arms about this as a citizenry.
So 30 minutes has went by in a flash. Any last-minute thoughts here before we head out?
No, again, I'll come on as often as you can have me, because this is the conversation that Alaskans. It's crucial to Alaska, right? It's our energy economy is our economy, and 1/4 of our private sector jobs are tied to oil and gas. Another 6%, 8% are in mining. Everything that we do in Alaska to add jobs and create opportunities should be something that each and every one of your listeners cares about, and we'll continue to fight for it. Power of the Future. Don't forget, you can follow me at powerofthefuture.com, on Twitter at PTF or I love emails. Shoot me an email at rick@powerofthefuture.com. And I promise, even if you take shots at me, I respond to each and every one of them, because it's one part of the job.
That's awesome, Rick. Well, I appreciate you joining us here on the Must Read Alaska show. We'll put a link to the Power of the Future in the podcast description. And for folks that listen, read, and watch Must Read Alaska, we want to thank you for doing that. We exist to spread conservative news for all the nooks and crannies of Alaska. And if you want to help keep the lights on here at Must Read Alaska, just go to mustreadalaska.com and click on that donate button. That right there on the right-hand side. Every $5, $10, $100 helps. Like I said in the intro, we are not funded by some dark web nonprofit money conglomerate. We're just funded by everyday folks who care about conservative news in Alaska. So until next time, I'm John Quick from somewhere in Alaska. Thank you so much, Rick, for joining us.